When you see the AMG badge on any model, even if it is old, you know that it is a car made for performance high and fast, but with German muscles and a voice in 8. The mighty YouTuber Rex decided to buy just one. It was involved in a very severe accident with the front end of a 2008 Mercedes-AMG E63. As we begin this repair journey, don't forget to join us here at Redline Reactions and let's remove the German. There was a long war between BMW and Mercedes in the early 2000s. Mercedes launched the Belay 55 with a 5,500 cubic centimeters supercharged engine, and then BMW responded. A legendary car until now. It was also the M5, which came out at the time with a giant 10-cylinder engine. It reaches 8,000 revolutions per minute, so of course Mercedes did not keep silent about this. I downloaded the E63 that we have in today's video with the universal engine, which was the code. His M156, which is currently here, will have a 6,200 cubic centimeters V8. The important thing is that he won the auction. The one who was in the car using the mobile phone at a very cheap price opened the cape to see. The giant engine that is present and that majestic view produces 520 horsepower, and here it is, as usual, AMG. The engineer's name will be written on the engine. The problem of repair is general in accidents, especially in German cars have spare parts. Here, even if the model is old, their price will be expensive. In an illogical way, the thing he was most afraid of was the air suspension system. This is because he heard and expected that it would be expensive in the case of these cars, but it will be discovered yet it was checked that half of it was working, which was a miracle regarding the accident that happened, the scene of downloading the car from. On the winch it was a horror movie, literally the version was very, from the ground because of that the air suspension system was leaking all the air in it. So it was impossible to accelerate. They had to use a fault detection device to trick and laugh at me. The computer belongs to the car and they upload each side manually, all the thinking now in the engine area, because if it turns out to be worn out and needs to be changed, then if this happens, the car has nothing to do with it. It needed to be repaired, and he threw it away. The first thing he did was take it inside his workshop to see how he would start. The chassis was pressing on the front tire, so the car was driving with great difficulty. The first problem I encountered is that the bag does not open because the battery is completely dead and the manager is at night. Everything was electronic, so he had to do a jump start in front of the fuse box. I will use the positive terminal in the fuse box and the screw on the assistant as the negative terminal for my hand. The car has a charge, but when you open the bag, you find that the last time the car was licensed was in March 2025. Meaning, the Marcona was only there for a few months, but it didn't last long. As soon as I opened the contact, it started to appear many warnings, then a message about a malfunction. The security system goes to use the malfunction detection device and starts. He lifted the car manually, side by side, and he could hear the sound of the motor being lifted while it was running, pressing from it. A little while, the system is really working, but there is a leak. I uploaded it above completely to see what happened under the right side. The chassis was a little twisted, but not broken. He found the scissors rubber. This was cut off, most likely due to the lift that removed the car from the auction and threw it onto the trailer. While they were examining the assistants behind them, they discovered the problem that caused the assistant to leak air. The rear is crooked at an angle of 15 degrees and cut off. They thought they would cancel this air system altogether and install it. A normal spring support system, but Rex wanted to maintain the luxury of this model also. As they were examining the size of the drums and brakes, they noticed the brake disc. Its size is very large, and this is a mandatory or normal arrangement for a car that weighs 1 ton and 800 kilos, but the idol came. When they dismantled the tire, they found that the chassis itself was badly damaged due to the accident. The tire was damaged. He scratched the chassis itself and removed the oil plug and noticed that the plug or screw was almost missing. After he removed it, about 8.5 half a liter of oil came out. It was black in color and smelled very bad. This means that it is old and used, but you do not notice any metallic sheen or appearance in the oil, a positive indicator that the engine is in good condition so far. Remove the oil filter, cut it with a knife, and spread the paper. He took it down to examine it and see if there were metal scraps or feathers in it or not, and he found some. They are very small, which is normal for a used car, but reassuringly, no parts can be found: bronze, copper, or even plastic from the engine pulls, so this is the second positive indicator that the engine is slim. Finds the crushed bar and putty applied to each other to the point that the nails are not satisfied and come apart. He sat with an electric saw and cut through the iron of the car to remove the lantern. Of course it was broken. He found that the group's belt was broken in two. This is good information, because this means that the engine was broken. He was running at the time of the accident and had not locked it before. Also, he noticed that the air conditioning compressor and its pump valve were dead. The power was completely dead and needed to be changed, and the oil was getting damaged and leaking, and the radiator was. It was strangely crooked and the cooling fan was damaged due to the force of the accident. He took the key and decided to turn the shaft. He held the crank manually to see if the engine was idling or turning normally, and in fact the motor was turning with it. It is normal to feel air pressure, and this is more reassuring, but at the same time, he hears a ticking sound coming from his head. Engine Ozlick. Of course, this sound is very disturbing, but it is possible that this sound is because there is not enough oil pressure currently. There is no oil cooler hose in the pipes. It is solid and completely sealed, so I am afraid to operate the engine and the hose. This is because the oil will not reach the motor and will burn, so he tries to repair it in a specialized workshop, but he does not know how. So they had to buy a used one with a new oil cooler for about $400. Raffer thought about it. The North had problems with the chassis, as well as obvious bumps and bends, which he did not care about from her at first. He was not at all happy with this conversation, but he decided to continue, of course, going to an agent. Mercedes buys an original oil filter and finds it costs $100, so he says it's too expensive. The rest of the parts will remain in working order. How will he reinstall the oil cooler, the new hose, and the housing and packaging? Also, new engine oil. Remove the fuses from the gasoline pump to keep the engine running. Marshmallow only at the beginning, so that it builds oil pressure before allowing it to actually work. After I put the oil, the cooler was all fine and was turning, but the car wasn't speaking at all. There wasn't even a ticking sound. The sprinkler. They brought a malfunction detection device and started scanning all the codes. There were a huge amount of malfunctions in every. From the beginning of the airbag to the brakes, they wiped everything and tried to turn it around again, but unfortunately there is no action. It completely refuses to turn, and this is most likely due to the safety system that locked the engine. After the accident, he was so frustrated that he began to doubt that this operation would work at all, so he decided to seek help. His friend, Marco, who is an expert and works at a Mercedes dealership, brought a huge new battery. It cost them about $500. They used a powerful old ampometer from the 70s to measure voltage, and they found that the battery was fine and the computer recognized the key, but there was no signal connecting to the marsh or starter. Marco discovered that the electricity was not connected to the marsh. When Rex started, the switch was twisted. The expectations now were that some wires were cut due to the accident, or water got in the braid and made a lock, or the Arab mind itself or the ECU decided there was a problem. Margot decided. He makes a movement like this, which is that he connects an electric wire directly to the march so that it makes it spin by force. The computer actually ran as soon as the wire touched the motor, and its sound was very smooth and there is nothing wrong with it. This was the news that Rex was waiting for to complete the project, even though there was no sound of knocking, but there is still the slight ticking sound that we said. They had to turn off the motor quickly because it still had no engine or cooling water. They were afraid that the engine would overheat, and Marco also confirmed it to him. There is a module that must be changed in order for the car to turn the key normally instead of the jump start method. The person who did it decided to buy a car for spare parts to save money and actually bought a Mercedes-AMG E63 model 2007 for about $2,500. It had very good mileage and had damage to the roof. It is simple, and this is one or more cylinders in the engine that are not working properly, so the combustion process will not be It is not 100% correct, and the reason for this problem could be the spark plugs or indicators, coils or even sprinklers, and it may also be leaking air hoses, but that is its purpose in the first place. If he takes spare parts, he will not use them at all, and there is no other solution other than this, and they are transporting them. Very weak in this way, and when they stopped the two cars next to each other, he discovered that the color was it is pure black, but the car he bought to get the tin from is a slanting black color. Purple, so the fenders and hood will not last forever, so they must buy new parts or even they sprayed to correct the color difference that occurred. Dismantle the car 280 to remove the radiator and his base, the lights, and also the fenders. If he had bought all these pieces from scrap, they would have been. It will cost him more than $2,000, so it is definitely an idea that he buys a complete car and sells the engine and gearbox. And the furniture will also be made in the end. The important thing is when it reaches the stage of the heater and fan. They discovered a ridiculous surprise that the parts of the AMG models are completely different from the A-Class models ordinary. The cooling fan in the AMG is much larger, and its sprayer has a similar design, different and bigger. Moreover, there is a control unit that is not available in the second car, even the radio. The same one for the AMG will be thicker to cool the 6200C engine. But the only good detail is that Bacon Air Conditioning itself decided to look for alternatives to aftermarket. The budget does not go outside. The one who made it thought about the fenders in order to reach a point in the chassis in order to. He cuts it and installs it in the AMG, but he discovers a disaster in this car and finds that this part is from the chassis was repaired, painted, and had so much putty on it that the factory welds were not visible. In fact, he knocked on it and heard the sound of putty and knew that this car had been in a major accident before. She corrected any words, so he decided that he would not take that part from her because it was not completely healthy. He unpacked and left. The radiator base was complete, and the base turned out to be fine, without any problems, and that was what it was. I need it to be fixed, and what is wrong with the AMG? Go back to the second and remove everything from it. The destroyed remains that he left behind, like the old radiator seat, and he also finds the base. His engine wasted his mind, so he started to clean up all this talk so that he could see the chassis completely. In the car's face to show him the chassis bars, he found that the left side was very intact, but the right side, where the impact occurred, had a very clear fracture. Despite everything he saw it, but he was very optimistic. He used a drill bit to remove all his welds, the factory of the destroyed parts in AMG. This issue required great precision because he cuts the first layer of the sheet without perforating what is underneath. He then dismantles these parts until, to some extent, the destroyed panel began to loosen, and the upper chassis parts came out for installation. In its proper place, they brought a Toyota surf truck equipped with a 5.5-ton winch to pull it. They use it as a Mercedes chassis. The problem is that when they started to install the Mercedes car, she was pulling in front of her and the winch was not pulling the chassis itself. Even when he sat inside her and stomped, the brakes were still moving. They thought of a good idea, which was to tie the Mercedes to the car. The workshop's lift is so that it remains stable on the ground and does not move, and they really started to tighten the chassis with the winch in the opposite direction. The sight was frightening, of course, because a crane could be anywhere the moment it was removed from the ground. The chassis began to adjust and return to its original place almost completely. Try them. They installed the radiator seat and found it installed in place and its screws were fixed. It was a miracle. As for this part that was mashed in front, after the face adjusts a little, he decides to hear a sound. The second engine was clearly more quiet, and this made him repeat that the system needed to be changed. The exhaust is perfect. To make her voice louder and stronger, in light of work, he made a phone call to her. I completely turned him around and discovered that he was being scammed while buying. These auctions generally have risks. Many and all sites place many warnings in order to disclaim responsibility because there is a possibility that the car was stolen or had a terrible accident like the Mercedes we had, or was even inside it. There are criminal conversations that involve suspicious problems, so the matter may be brought to their attention that they are visiting. paper and they do forgery just to increase the price of the car, and the money increases itself to come out for whose benefit behind the buyer. The important thing is that a friend of his named Fraser came to him, and he is the expert who revealed everything. He is supposed to be a man who works in IT and business and has a company. His job is to answer history. The entire vehicle from the day it left the factory until the moment the accident occurred when I got it to the auction, I would not know if it was stolen, if it was written off from the insurance, or if the meter was sold the kilometer I play in. So he goes in and gets the 2000 or the vehicle identification number or whatever it is. Chassis number. And find out if she has a dark history with criminals in the past. The beginning of the topic is that this car was repaired twice in 2023, and it has 6 months remaining. It only walked 400 kilometers and then sat. He reviews the history of car in front of him, but all of this is not important. He is finished buying and comes back again to continue. The owner of the project suggested that they heat the iron until it remains red so that they can hammer it. They adjust easily, and they actually brought the device with which they will heat it, and they were able to return the chassis with pleasure. As it was, the radiator remained installed in its correct place, and the spare parts opened naturally. The new car he brought and the new radiator and fan were very difficult. They are rotated because AMG models are always different from regular Mercedes models. He also knew how to get a base for the air suspension system because the old one was destroyed and impossible. It was adjusted while it was running. He discovered that the pulleys on the engine were in a very bad condition, especially the air conditioning. The power styrene was damaged, so it was a mistake, and he was dismantling the air conditioning pulley and broke it. They had to ask for it. A new one, specially from America, because it is very expensive if the whole compressor was brought back, since the parts. It takes time for you to come from outside, and he decides to work on what is there now. He rides and sits on it. The antenna and discovered that the new crash bar does not have holes for the screws that will secure the enemies. He brought a drill and drilled holes in the iron. He used something called a rivet, which is a rivet nut. It is installed in a hole made with a hammer drill and iron to create a place for attaching a nail to the parts. What is not possible is to reach the outside to install the regular valves and connect the air hoses. The electric stick is in the place it is supposed to be and the compressor comes out. He lifted the Mercedes and found that his rules were strictly enforced, but he was happy that the compressor or the press itself became operational, so he decided to save money and adjust his containers with his own hands and pound them. Until she was able to install the second one, the electrical wires were cut in a simple place as a result of the accident. He brought a soldering iron and proceeded to solder the wires and return them as they were to ensure that the system was working properly and there was no malfunction. There was an iron in front of him and at his base he did not know. Where exactly were they installed? He discovered that this was the annual air pump and its rules were it is crooked and has a strange shape. The problem is that the parts used on it are specific to any MG model only. He won't find anything like it in his car. He cut off the laurel and opened Google and kept searching. He took pictures of the engine to see exactly where this part was installed, and he started applying the iron and adjusting it in order to install it in its place, and in the end he was actually successful. He installed it and fixed it, and this movement was saved. Of course, he costs a lot of money to collect the external engine parts and the AMG plastic cover. Whoever has a gift for the engine installed the fender and front light to see the car as it assembles. Its shape remains a factor, even though the internal parts of the chassis are still intact, but its shape while she was standing with the lights and fenders, he felt that the fatigue had not gone away, but would come back again. Because of his problem, he needed air conditioning tomorrow and tomorrow the power, which was their request. He got rid of America, but he discovered that it would take 3 weeks, so he was unfortunately forced to buy a complete air conditioning compressor and also a complete power pump to take only their pulleys. This solution was not cheaper, of course, but it was much faster than waiting for international shipping and discovering it. The pulleys of the regular models are from AMG in this case, instead. He installs the whole new power pump by taking the metal pulley from the pump he bought and installed on it. The pump in the original, old car was made of plastic and was destroyed in the accident. These metal parts are considered an improvement, and it is much better to install the air conditioner tomorrow as well, and so the traffic remains he was ready to tighten it. He got a new belt in the same size and knew this when he found the same code. That was the moment. This was very crucial because this belt is the one that will operate everything around the motor. After he installed it, he started running again and heard the sound of the engine as it was this time. They tried, but something flew from the first turn. The reel that was still attached flew off. A pure place, but this was definitely not normal, because she was supposed to be depressed, so he doubted that the accident had occurred. The shaft of the pump was a little crooked, and this is what made the pulley fly off, so I used a second method. To hold the pulley in place, he brought a hard nail and started hammering on the edges of the pulley to rivet it. Or he applies her iron to the pole so that it holds firmly and does not come out again, so he goes to try. He was spinning, and this time it was actually Saturday morning, and the engine was running regularly, even though he noticed that the car was not working. She was standing still, but he was happy that nothing strange happened this time. After that he went to collect the rest of the lathes, and Marco, his friend, entered the workshop and began working on electricity and wires. And also the gears, and the main goal was to make the car turn with the key because they were tall last time. They were doing it the jump start method, and he sat for a while working on the braid and the wires, so he decided to do something smart, which is to cancel the gear stick system just to test it. The rotor in the car was actually damaged by the switch. For the first time, he discovered that the gear cable was not adjusted. That's right, and this is what made the car so messy. When changing the gearbox, they removed the cable and clips. The broken one was from the AMG and they took their replacement from the second car. There was a problem. But it does not fully engage in parking or driving mode, and this was certainly very dangerous. But here Marco intervened and started adjusting everything as soon as they got down the car and put it on the ground. Rex rode and tried the car. The car moved in front of him and behind smoothly for the first time in an hour. I would buy it and be sure that after he was reassured, he would take it for a spin outside the garage. Its sound was truly world-class. The engine was very smooth in its movement and in literally every need. He installed the hinges of the hood that he took from the spare parts car and found that the back door belonged to the AMG had a slight hit. He didn't know where the hit came from, even though the accident happened next. But it was closing and opening normally, the door of E63 in the dialogue of the keyless entry, which is he opened the car without a key, but this option was not available in the second car. They had to remove all the wires, modules, and braids from the old closed door and move them to the new door. We went to the chassis part. He started hitting with a hammer and using a slide hammer in order to pull the iron out. Rex did not find the original bases for the oil cooler because they were invalid. He took the iron, cut it, made the bases, and installed it on the chassis, very normally, so he saved time, efforts and money. Of course, it was installed and the oil cooled, and it remained very stable, not moving from its place, and then it was installed. The fenders and fenders. The shock here is that the fenders or fenders he has are not those of the car. The shape of the car is a little strange, but it is mandatory to ride it in order for the Mercedes to be legal. On the street, he came out with her and went to put 98 gasoline, and the sound of the engine while she was running was terrifying, and he was amazed. The car reaches and brakes RPM 7,000 revolutions per minute. Suddenly, while they were walking, they heard a loud squeaking sound. Made it clear that the rear wheel bolts were loose and missing a bolt, so he returned to the workshop. Quickly, of course, then he went to Mars Performance and got items that were completely identical to the original. He also took a small spoiler from them for the bag to complete the offensive look and decided to return it for its classic look. The old owner used blackout, meaning he covered all the chrome. There were black stickers in the car, so they sat and he would remove these stickers or tires from the top. The sides of the car and also on the trims are due to the chrome touches that add luxury for the E-Class model. Remove the door handles, mirrors, fenders and side corners in order to begin the spraying phase. He handed it over to his owner, John, who was an expert in plumbing and painting. So I started and came back and it was literally zero, but a mechanical problem arose, As the engine was shaking, he frowned and found that the engine mounts were damaged once and the hydraulic oil inside them was leaking. The right base was easy, but the left base was impossible to change, to the point that he thought about dismantling the whole engine to reach the screw above. In the end, with the help of his friend, they determined that they would change it safely. Finally installed the AMG hairs in their exact place. Until right now, Rex has spent $17,000 on this project. This number includes its price and spare parts and paint, while its market price can reach $35,000. Thus, we saw a repair trip. Mercedes E63 initial appearance says that it has no other soul, so thank you very much if you have arrived for this minute. Write us your opinion in the comments below about repairing classic cars. Do you see, was it worth the expense or not? Write to us if you like the upcoming German model. What about it? Of course, subscribe to the channel, and that's it. Peace be upon you.